Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Clive Brady. I'm the chairman of the BWA. So welcome to this TSS and Northern Ireland update webinar. Graham, can you just show me the agenda?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Right, so I think we've got about hour and a half. Is that right? Plugged for this, Graham?
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. So this afternoon, then joined from TSS. Sorry, how do you pronounce your name? Is it Shanali? Is it?
Shanali.
Shanali. Okay. Welcome, Shanali. I'm from TSS, and joining also from HMRC. Richard Bowyer, Holly West, Carmel Crawford, and Phil Crawley, and that will be a presentation from HMRC around obviously a Northern Ireland update from an excise perspective, and also customs and VAT aspects. We will also have a Q&A session. I think that probably merge, won't it, Graham, is the plan?
I think that's probably the best idea, to merge them together.
Yeah, so what we'll do is allow obviously Shanali to do her session, Shanali to do her presentation, the HMRC team to do theirs, and then we'll throw it open to a Q&A following that. So as I say, plan is to do all that within 90 minutes. Just a bit of housekeeping. So we'll try and keep everybody on mute, bar the people obviously due to speak, and that will just enhance the experience for everybody. In terms of questions, if you have any questions as we go, then Graham will be capturing those. So if you can use the chat facility to raise anything, and when we get to the Q&A, if you'd like to raise your hand facility, utilize that, and then Graham, you'll be able to capture those. And we can, and then obviously come to you as part of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and any questions you'll capture, won't you? And then we can relay those to the Q&A.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Without further ado, then less from me, and I'll hand over to Shanali. Thank you.
Great, thanks. So hi everyone, I'm Shanali Dashani. I work in Fujitsu as part of the Future Border team, and I've been supporting on the delivery of TSS for the last couple of months. You also have my lovely colleague Magda on, and we both form part of the stakeholder engagement team, but do lots of kind of work to do with the delivery of, like I said, the TSS, but we particularly focus on the stakeholder engagement side. So we run loads of these sort of sessions. So really glad to be presenting to yourselves today. We've got sort of a presentation which I'll flash up in a second, but we were kind of very much doing it's kind of an overview of TSS with a lot of focus on how to complete supplementary declarations, as that kind of continues to be the pinch point for a lot of companies as we're kind of getting closer to the steady state. One thing we would like to do is perhaps in like a month or so run sort of a similar session covering more sort of specific to the BWA. So TSS will start releasing functionality to support excise, customs warehousing, and a whole host of the customs special procedures later in the summer. So it would be great to kind of see these as a two-part session. So I will just pop the slides up. I'll be presenting for the first half, and then Magda will take over for the second. And as we said, please do put any questions you have into the chat, because I'm sure there will be plenty, and if there's any that we can answer in the background, that would be really useful. So kind of what we aim to cover today is sort of an introduction to the Trader Support Service. What do we do? What don't we do? What does that process look like for Great Britain to Northern Ireland movements? Sort of a touch on what that means if you're moving a controlled good and what controlled means. Lots of focus, like I said, on the supplementary declaration. What's your strategy? Have you heard of the UK Trader Scheme? Do you know how to claim a waiver? Have you thought about your tariff options? And then kind of looking, you know, as we said, sort of further down the line, as we're moving closer to steady state, what's coming up in the releases and how can the TSS support your businesses? You'll have to forgive me, I have a bit of a cold, so I'll try not to croak my way through much to the too much through the presentation. But it's just worth kind of setting out quite early on what the TSS does and doesn't do. We are a free-to-use digital service. We're contracted as part of a consortium with the HMRC to essentially help run customs declarations for all traders moving goods between Great Britain in Northern Ireland. We went live on the 21st of December last year, ready for when the Northern Ireland Protocol kicked in on the 1st of January this year. So as we said, we are completely free to use. We have something like 39,000 traders now registered in using the TSS, which is really, really fantastic to see, you know, well beyond what our estimates of the market who were going to need it really have engaged with us really well. And as you'll see in a second, we'll sort of come across to some of the statistics. It is worth noting that TSS is under a temporary contract. It was very much built to help with the immediate administrative burden, help in terms of the guidance, etc., with all of the new processes that kick in, but with very much a view of, you know, supporting a trade and kind of customs environment to be built up in Great Britain and Northern Ireland, which, as we know, due to us trading for so long within the EU, it isn't as big as it used to be. So this kind of TSS allows for that time to build, and then eventually we'll exit the market once there is strength there for sort of trade to continue as is. So what does TSS actually do? One of our primary focuses is to ensure that traders are supported in terms of what are the new requirements? What does that mean for me? What declarations do I need to do? When do I need to them? What data do I now need to do? What happens when I get to the port? You know, just really being clear on what that end-to-end journey is. And as we said, we service the entire market of everyone moving goods within that UK territory from Great Britain to Northern Ireland. So it's been really important for us to make sure, you know, we support not only the largest of traders, but also the smallest, you know, and covering off all the requirements that come in, you know, not just the HMRC requirements, but things, you know, that come under DEFRA. So, you know, are you moving food products? Do you know how to get an export health certificate? Do you know how to route to a border control post? And as I said, just kind of really reinforcing what that end-to-end journey looks like now. So as part of all of this, our primary need is obviously to actually support with the declaration. So we do all of this digitally on our platform. The TSS platform runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it's, you know, it's very much putting digital first, you know, moving away from the typical legacy of paper, custom systems, stamping, etc. Everything is done online. You can view all of your records, submit all the data, hold them as drafts, etc. And that's all done, as I said, via our portal. But behind that, there is a huge amount of human support for any business that requires it. We've stood up a huge contact centre of around 750 agents. These range sort of in tiers. So you have your tier ones who deal very much sort of with the more kind of call centre type queries. You have your tier twos who have a couple of years of customs experience, and they deal a lot more in the kind of case management, you know, where is there guidance that they can direct you to, which team do they need to direct you to, etc. And then you've got your tier threes. And this is sort of a pool of 50 or 60 agents who have 20 years worth of industry knowledge. You know, they've worked in-house as customs consultants. They really know everything there is to know about customs, and they're there to really provide that more hands-on approach. You know, let's walk through your complex query. Is this declaration correct? You do need to use different types of codes, and, you know, are there to really, as I said, make sure the more complex queries are dealt with in that sort of more human contact way. So that's what the TSS does do. Just a quick note on what the TSS can't do. So as I said, because we do serve the entire market and we do it all for free. We're not a mandatory service, but equally we can't provide that sort of personalised service that a typical customs broker would do. So if you're looking for more like what's the most economically advantageous ways for me to trade, should I open a customs warehouse? What customs special procedures could I use? Would this be better for cash flow? Those sorts of things. That's a bit outside of TSS's remit, simply because, as I said, we've got to service almost 40,000 traders. So if you are looking for that, we really do urge you to, you know, talk to intermediaries, get in contact with agents or freight forwarders, as that's really what they've, you know, the services they're stood up to do, and kind of manage all of that for you. And as I said, because we are on a temporary contract, we don't really want to decimate the market that exists. We want to build it up. And then a final note on we don't raise the non-standard documentation. So as I said, if you're moving goods that fall under the DEFRA controls, we can't raise the export health certificates, we can't raise your export licenses or your excise licenses, etc. But we can show you where to go, where it's needed, and how to obtain them. So just a quick look at the TSS service metrics. As I said, we're really proud of the service we've stood up. We've moved over 500,000 consignments now, and we're catching up on what we know is our subdeck backlog. We've almost evened out, or at least traders are starting to engage with the process, and we're really clearing through like hundreds of thousands of these. As I said, we have a huge amount of education material. We put all of this on our education partner site, which is NICTA, or the NI Customs and Trade Academy.co.uk. You'll see lots of links throughout to the website throughout the presentation, and we'll share the slides with you after, so you can go. And we really do urge you, go take a look. You know, we have webinars, we have data guides, step-by-step user guides, demo videos, really like a whole host of information on how to help you complete declarations, you know, going from the very basic to the very complex. So please do visit NICTA if you haven't. We've had huge amounts of downloads, huge amount of interaction with our site. And as I said, we really do focus on digital first, and it's really great to see people kind of engaging with the system in that way. As you'll see later, if you are a trader or a business who's moving lots and lots of declarations, high volume of goods, it's maybe worth thinking about our bulk load API if you haven't, and it gets rid of a lot of the errors and it can help you clear through a backlog without you having to do them manually. And the other day we had a trader who completed 20,000 declarations over the weekend, just kind of proving how much easier it is. Excuse me. So what does the process look like? Sorry, Magda, do you think you could take over for a second?
Yeah, well, no problem. So the general process we try to make as simple and make it possible for goods to move without being stopped at the border. So we're starting from the ENS safety and security declarations, which automatically will generate simplified frontier declaration. So those are the two pieces of declarations required for the goods to be moved across from GB to NI. This is later followed up by supplementary declaration, which is more detailed declaration, including commodity codes and countries of origin, which are not always required on the SFD stage. The next slide, please. So we've outlined it in a nice, clear format of what is being created at what stage of the journey. So we're seeing that the first transaction is taking place in GB. Then before the goods are being moved to the port, the ENS and safety and security declaration is being created, which also generates the SFD. And at the later stage, the supplementary declaration with full details is being created, and collection of any duties due on goods that are moving as at risk is being made. And the next slide. You unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Sorry, I was just going to say it's worth noting within this journey that there are additional steps you have to do. So although you will raise your declarations, as Magda said, on the TSS, and we use the model of, like we said, splitting it into the two. So you've got your simplified declaration, which will occur before the journey moves, and then your supplementary declaration, which will occur once the goods have been delivered, and you have a month to kind of get all the data involved. And our model sort of focuses on very much sort of the NI buyer, but as we've said right at the beginning there, it's worth really noting what your Incoterms are, because it really could depend on who it is that it's interacting with the TSS process. So for example, if you're moving goods under what's known as DDP or delivered duty paid, it will be the GB supplier that has the TSS account who will be raising the declarations and be responsible for any import duty, versus in a normal term it will be the NI buyer, as this will be the sort of declarant or the importer of record here. Within the way the TSS model is set up, it will generally be your carrier, so your haulier, who will provide the safety and security declaration or the ENS information. That's because it needs to have the vehicle data and so on, as it's the security declaration for entering the an EU sort of security zone. But you can split this. So we have a separate model called consignment first, which allows the trader to go in, add on the consignment detail, and then the haulier to go in and add the vehicle detail. So it really just depends on what suits your business model the most. As Magda pointed out, you do your ENS declaration on the TSS. We then use the exact same data to auto-complete the simplified frontier declaration for you. The whole point of this was to make this as streamlined as possible. We send the ENS off to the relevant government system, which in this case is called ICS in Northern Ireland, and then we send the simplified frontier declaration to CDS, which is the customs system operating in Northern Ireland. If those both clear, you get two sort of clearance codes called movement reference numbers. So you'll get one for the ENS, you'll get one for the SFD. We provide those back to the haulier and trader via the platform. Your haulier then needs to access the GVMS system, which is the goods vehicle movement system, and it's another HMRC system that essentially tracks the movement across the Irish Sea. You need to input both of those MRNs. So again, one for your simplified frontier declaration, one for your ENS. And then if those are both cleared, GVMS will say, great, here's your goods movement reference or your GMR. Apologies, we know there's lots of acronyms through it, so sometimes it's just easy to lay it out like this. Your journey can then begin. Your ferry operator will scan the GMR at the point you board the ferry, which is why it's really important to make sure all these steps are done in advance so that your journey's not held up. And it's the scanning of the GMR that lets TSS know that the goods have now moved. So it's just a really important step that does actually happen, as that's what triggers the supplementary declaration. And then, as we said, once you clear it into Northern Ireland, you can continue to your final destination, and then TSS will ping you or the trader, whoever the EORI number was used in the ENS, to say, okay, we know your goods have moved, you've got until the 5th working day of the following month to log back on and submit your supplementary declaration. And at that point, you'll know if any duty is due and payable. So yeah, so those are just sort of the steps. It's just worth noting here that there is sort of extra things you need to do if you're moving controlled goods. This typically has confused quite a lot of people because of the word of controlled. So what we mean here is goods that are not only customs controlled, i.e., things that fall typically under HMRC remit, so things like excise goods, firearms, etc., but also any good which is regulated by any government body. So there's a lot of focus here on the DEFRA sort of things. Live animals, food, meat, dairy, etc., plant products, they will all need to tick the box that says you are moving a controlled good, and we will ask for a few data elements up front, such as a commodity code and any documentation that's required in order for you to clear the border. If you are not sure what you need, we have a point here where you can go onto the NI tariff tool, which will let you know what your good is, what documents are needed, and where these are inputted onto the TSS. I won't dwell too long on it, but the point is just if you are moving SPS goods, please make sure you've registered on traces. Please make sure your NI buyer notifies traces by raising a CHED form to say these goods are moving, these are the types of goods, and then your GB supplier will typically need to arrange for a vet check, and a vet will need to sign, seal, and certify the goods. And you will then need to update traces with that. You'll get a CHED reference. And that's what we'll need when you're inputting your declaration on the TSS, and that just lets us know that all of the SPS stuff is done. And it's really important to recognise who it is that does what, because Traces is an EU system. So it will need to be somebody living in Northern Ireland, or your buyer, essentially, who will complete that. So it's just worth being aware of it. And as we sort of flick through, there are some diagrams just to show you what it is that you need to do and why it's important, because it's before you come to the TSS. So we won't dwell too long on this bit, and as I said, we'll share the slides with you. As I said, there's loads and loads of videos, so if you would like any more information, please do just visit NICTA. So now we'll kind of focus on supplementary declarations. Hopefully my voice won't give out before we hand over to Magda, but hopefully we'll be okay. So just a kind of reminder of the flow again, you need to be registered on the TSS. Your carrier will submit the shipment information, creating the ENS. We will use that to create the SFD. That will then either clear, or you'll be asked to make amendments, etc. You then will carry on with your journey. You would then need to provide your supplementary declaration at that point. As I said, that's when any duty will be due. It's important just to kind of remember those timelines, because a lot of traders sort of have done the ENS, done the SFD, and kind of have forgotten that the subdeck exists. And it really is important, it's both parts of the declaration form a full import declaration. You can't do one without the other. And if you're not completing supplementary declarations, or your traders or whoever it is in your supply chain who's responsible for it isn't doing it, they are essentially being non-compliant with the HMRC guidelines here, and ultimately with the UCC. So, please do make sure, if you haven't logged on yet, you are comfortable with what a supplementary declaration is, you're comfortable with what it's talking about, and you're kind of aware of what data is actually needed. It's really important to make sure that the correct EORI number, which is the EU Identification Business Number, is inputted correctly, because that's what's going to link it through. So just kind of a note on please make sure they are correct. And just a reminder, as I said, of the timelines here, it will be by the 5th working day of the following month. So apologies, that's a little bit outdated now. And just, I'll hand over to Magda now, but just a note on what we mean by the backlog here was because TSS was set up at pace. We went live, as we said, at the beginning of the year, but it was mainly focusing on the flow, so getting goods across the frontier. So it was a lot to do with our simplified frontier declaration. We launched our supplementary declaration in February, meaning there was a sort of a 6-week backlog of goods that had moved that hadn't yet triggered a subdeck. and those are slowly sort of being cleared. So if you have moved any goods within the timelines indicated there, please do check where you are supposed to be moving them. But ultimately, please do remember, if you're a trader who's trying in good faith to engage with the process, neither TSS nor HMRC is going to penalise you. We are aware that this is difficult, and it's there's lots of new data that needs to be inputted. So as long as you're engaging with the process, let us know if you need an agent to contact you to walk you through any part of it. Hopefully we'll cover off quite a lot of what's needed in the slides, but just please do make sure that you are engaging, because ultimately that's what's going to make the difference between whether you're trying to be compliant or not. So on that note, I will hand over to Magda to talk you through the stencil.
Supplementary declaration system.
Yes.
So this is based on the Article 177 of the UCC, and if you are on the UK trader scheme, I think we'll be covering UK TS later on in the slides, but if you are moving goods as not at risk, this will be a very good tool for you to combine the declaration into one commodity code instead of listing individual commodity codes that are included within your deliveries. So it must be a commodity code that attracts the highest duty rate. That's why it's quite vital to be on the UK TS, as if you are moving goods as not at risk, the duty rate itself won't really matter and have any financial impact on you. But you can also choose to use it in other instances if you're moving goods at risk but using a waiver, or at risk and deciding to pay the duty because it might be your economical decision that you would prefer to make the supplementary declaration process quicker at a slightly higher cost of duty payments. So as Shinali mentioned, we've got another link within the presentation. When we share the presentations, might be worth logging into it and going through the sections of the Supplementary Declaration Assistant. Asks you multiple questions, provides you a choice of product groups, and based on that generates tables for you, which you can use as a template to later update the TSS portal itself. So if you're constantly moving the similar set of goods under the same category, your process of submitting the declarations will be much simpler than declaring individual items. The next slide, please. We also do have the videos as always. So yeah, more links for you. And as I mentioned, the main part of completing the supplementary declaration is the preparation. So I think by now, most of you would have seen some of the data requirements and are quite familiar with the trade tariff and commodity codes. But we do provide another guide, links to the guides as well. And as I mentioned, the declaration of moving goods as not at risk. So if you can identify that your goods are moving as not at risk and apply for the UK TS and your UK trader scheme authorization is approved, then if you are moving goods that are in free circulation in UK, moving them as not at risk to NI, your declaration won't attract any customs duties. We do provide another link to the guides as well, and within, actually we don't have, apologies, I thought it was linked to the UK TS, but I'm fairly sure it's further on, or if not, I'll pop it in the chat after we are finished. You can review the guidance on the UK TS applications. Some sectors are excluded from benefiting from that scheme, but majority of the traders, if you're moving goods for retail or sale to final customers, you would qualify for the UK TS. So it's very important for you to review if you qualify and apply if you do. And then next.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to say, and just to add in there, in case anyone isn't aware of these terms, so apologies if we're going too fast or too slow, please do let us know. All we mean here is, are your goods at risk of entering the EU typically via the Republic of Ireland, or you are not at risk, so i.e. you only move your goods between Great Britain and Northern Ireland, so it's an intra-UK movement, in which case you can become authorised on the UK trader scheme. And like Magda was saying, there's a few criteria you need to fulfil, so please do check if you are able to, but essentially it's you saying, I am a trusted trader and I only trade my goods within the UK, and therefore I will never be liable for those movements for any customs duty, because they are intra-UK versus my goods that potentially could move south of the border into the Republic and effectively enter the EU. I may be at risk of incurring EU import duty there, and it's just to make sure people don't circumvent those routes. And we really do urge you, and you'll see it a lot throughout this presentation, if you are able to be on the UK trader scheme, or your traders, your suppliers, whoever, it's really worth looking into it. And as Magda said, there are a few other things you can do if for whatever reason you can't qualify under the UK trader scheme. Perhaps you don't move goods very often or at low volume into Northern Ireland. Perhaps you can claim the waiver for your import duty because it's so low value or so low frequency. And as you'll see in the slides coming up, there are other things you can do. So it's really important to kind of decide on what your strategy here is. Sorry, Magda, I'll just jump back.
Okay, thank you. I'm curious to add to what Shonali was saying about how to identify when the goods are at risk of moving and attracting EU duties and when the goods are not. So you can see, we will share those slides so you will have time to digest. I'm not even sure you can see properly on the screen, but the goods will be not at risk if the EU duty is 0. Then we do ask the questions: are you UK TS? Do you hold a UK trader scheme authorization? And if you do ask another set of questions: are the goods subject to any EU trade defense measures, any quotas or anti-dumping? And another question about the commercial processing exceptions. As I've mentioned, not everyone can qualify for the UK TS. If you are within the processing sector that is outside of, I think, medical supplies, food processing or construction, you would not qualify for the UK TS status. And do the goods meet the end-use criteria? And based on answers to those questions, the decision tree will inform you if the goods are at risk or not at risk. And as I did mention, we do include the link to the UK TS application. If you do not qualify, you can claim a waiver that is based on the state aid with the limit of 200,000 euros for 3 tax years. But again, it's worth noting that 200,000 is a maximum given. It also can vary per sector, as some of the sectors will receive lower limits as they might already receive state aid in another form. So if you do decide to go for the waiver when your goods are moving at risk, then there is a section within the supplementary declaration when you would select NI8, and TSS would record for you how much state aid you've claimed for that particular declaration. You will also, the system will also send you reminders when you are due to complete your waiver forms. We also include the link to those as well. Next slide, please. And we also included similar decision tree for goods moving not GB/NI, but from rest of the world to NI. And it also lists when EU duties are applicable and when UK duties are applicable. So again, I won't go through the whole slide in detail. I'll leave that for your perusal. And the next slide, please. And the summary of what to pay attention to when preparing for completion of a supplementary declaration is checking the commodity codes and the duty rates, which are applicable to the commodity codes of goods you are moving. Checking if you are or can be registered on a UK TS. Also advisable to check the rules of origin, because sometimes if your goods are moving as at risk, you could qualify for a preferential treatment under EU-UK Trade and Cooperation Agreement, but we do urge you to review the specific chapters of the TCA relating to the preferential rules of origin, as these can vary based on the product type. And the last option is reviewing the duty waiver. So once you reviewed the 4 options available to you, you'll be able to decide which one is the best for your business. That would minimize the impact of any potential duties and taxes due. And the next slide, please. And I think I'll hand over back to Shonali, who can talk us through changes that are fairly newly implemented and upcoming changes within the system.
Great, thank you, Magda. Can you hear me okay? Am I on mute?
No, you're not on mute.
Okay, sorry, I can't tell when I was presenting. So thank you, Magda. So this was sort of loads and loads of service enhancements that went live over the last couple of months. We've done lots of work to help link through from the SFD to the subdeck, as we know, for lots of traders who are moving loads and loads of declarations. It can be quite difficult to track them through. So we're slowly releasing functionality that will allow you to directly link them on the portal. We really want to help traders notify as well. There is a field called Traders Reference, which is an optional field. It's for free text, but essentially it allows your supply chain to add in their internal references, so you can track that through. You know, as I said, it's free text, so whatever helps you link it through. And as hopefully lots of people will have noticed, we released something called the Recall to Draft option, which meant that when you submitted your subdeck, there was a chance for you to be able to review it, and if the duty seemed incorrect, or as Magda was saying, if you're claiming that you are not at risk under the UK Trader Scheme, or you are claiming a waiver, you would need to input codes NIREM and NIAID respectively. So perhaps if you hadn't done that, just being able to go back and review them and add those in. So that's been a really, really useful bit of functionality. And then this weekend just gone, release 5 went live, which has been really, really fantastic. So there's been lots of things that have gone live the last few months. The main ones being subsidy recording. So for example, if you are claiming the waiver, it's essentially using your state aid. So it's been able to help you track that, let you know when you're close to your limit. You can now use your own duty deferment account. And as I said, this weekend just gone, we went live with R5, which had lots and lots of really great functionality, able to raise a single ENS, which is really useful for traders. Perhaps moving goods that don't really require import declarations as of yet, but you can still do the ENS without it triggering all the way through. Or as the slide shows, next week we go live with our full frontier declaration, which instead of you having to do the SFD up front, you can do the entire declaration up front if you wish and pay duties at that before the journey begins. And that's really useful, as we'll see, is when we start introducing more and more of the alternate procedure codes. You can currently use return goods relief. So we're just, as you can see, we're starting to move kind of more into the complex reality of how supply chains work and how trade does move beyond the kind of basic declarations. And as I said, there's loads and loads of service enhancements that have gone live. I would show you a list, but there's about 20 things that have been released. But one of the main things to call out is there is now the copy and paste function. So if you are a trader who moves similar goods or 3 or 4 sets of goods each month, and you've got a perfect subdeck that now works for you because it's always the same sort of data, you can essentially just copy that and paste it into a new subdeck relating to your goods that you've moved more recently. So you're not always having to input and key in new data and kind of figure out what it was that went right for you. And then just a final touch on what's coming next. So as I said, R5 just went live, which means we are now gearing up for R6. We work in sort of 6 weeks to 2 month sprints. So this is sort of scheduled for August, September time. And what you're looking at is delivering that full suite of alternate procedures. So inward processing, outward processing, excise customs warehousing, which is probably the most relevant to this group. Sorry, Magda, you might have to.
We are also planning to introduce the inventory link locations with the ports for air freight, as that will be a requirement for rest of the world imports to NI. We've titled it API catch-up. What it means is whenever we introduce the changes are within the portal first, and then API catches up with whatever changes were made. So trying to get them aligned. Introducing the functionality for agents and intermediaries to have their own accounts. Currently, they are allowed to service the traders, but they do have to have access to the trader system, not as an agent. Introducing the security deposits that will be required for certain of the procedures. We'll be able to aggregate multiple SFDs into one SD, but that will provide more details later on, as there are specific rules for aggregation of the products. We also switching in ALVS risking. That will be validating any chats or any SPS documentation you've entered on the SFDs to be validated against traces and ALVS. So it will be very important from that schedule, from that release, to make sure that the details you are entering are correct. For example, chat numbers, the weights, and the commodity codes, they must be entered exactly the same way as in the TSS, as on the forms themselves. Making improvements to the service accessibility, introducing cash accounts, card charges, a section for non-compliant traders. And again, as Shonali mentioned, we did have about a list of 20 of service enhancements within the latest release, and we're expecting a similar amount for service enhancements as well for the next release. And we do have another slide with more links of what is required to the NICTA website. You will see full details of data requirements for all your declarations. What are the best ways of preparing to complete the declarations? User guides step by steps. There are also videos. Lots of user guides include links to other HMRC and CDS specific websites, error code guides, and the recording of the tariff on goods movement into an iWebinar. So you can watch the webinars at any time you fancy refreshing your memory. And the next slide. And we do have time for some questions, or Clive, do we leave all the questions to the very end?
I think what we'll do, Magda, is just collate those and and come back to those. Graham, I think that's the plan, isn't it? To kind of have a sweep up of a Q&A session.
Yeah, we'll get through all the information and have a Q&A at the end.
Yeah. Okay. But let's do that. So we'll capture those and we'll come back to those. But thank you for that, Magda and Jahaza. Sorry, apologies. Can't get your name right.
It's right, it's Shonali. It's right. I've worked my way through that, so
yeah, but I hope that cold gets better soon. That's clearly struggle for you. Okay, Richard, over to you and your team.
Yes, hello everybody. Thanks very much. Hope you can hear me. Good to be back with the BWA. So I think talking to Mike before he went off, he's sunning himself in Cornwall now, I believe. I think we saw that we'd probably want to spend most of the time today on the TSS, but that there was just an opportunity to provide anything by way of update, particularly on excise, and potentially customs and VAT. Now, I think VAT colleagues provided an update not too long ago on the 10th of June, but Phil Crawley has joined us today in case anything new has come up since then. I think on the customs side, unless anyone pipes up, we haven't got anyone because there's a bit of sickness in the team and they've got resource problems. So you'll have to make do with me on excise and Phil on VAT today, but obviously, as always, if there are any customs policy questions, very happy to take them away and send you the answers afterwards. I have got a very short slide deck that I will share. It's has that come up?
It has, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, there is not much to update you on, and and I'd be interested in your reactions to that. But I thought The first thing potentially I could do is just a very quick reminder of the kind of legal position so far as the Northern Ireland Protocol is concerned. Won't go through this in great detail because we're 6 months in now, and I'm sure you've come across most of these nuances already. But obviously, Article 8 is the article of the protocol that applies EU excise rules and VAT rules concerning goods to the UK in respect of Northern Ireland. And for Northern Ireland movements, Northern Ireland EU movements, Northern Ireland rest of world movements, essentially, that means the EU rules are going to apply. And we introduced the XI prefix for EMCS purposes to differentiate Northern Ireland from GB movements. And all the EU duty paid processes as required in the excise directive will apply between Northern Ireland and EU member states. Obviously for GB to NI movements, we, as I think when I spoke to you last time, we have made maximum use of the flexibilities in the directive to try to ensure as far as possible that that movement between Northern Ireland and Great Britain is as seamless as possible, as far as possible, as it was before the end of transition. So for movements from Northern Ireland to Great Britain, we can still have a single duty suspended movement in EMCS, and there's no duty point when the goods come into Great Britain. There's no point adding a duty point there, so if duty is paid in Northern Ireland, that's it. For Great Britain to Northern Ireland movement, slightly different position because we do have to apply the excise directive under the protocol, and that essentially says there's an import to the community when goods go into Northern Ireland, and that's where we apply our excise duty offset to duty paid goods, so as to avoid any double taxation, so as to avoid requirements on claiming and paying back drawback. And we also still facilitate a single duty suspended movement in EMCS, so that you can move goods in duty suspension from a GB warehouse to an NI warehouse, using the flexibilities under, I think it's Article 30 of the Excise Directive. I won't go through the position on complex movements because I think Paul Tarpey, when he's moved on now, unfortunately, but I think he gave you the benefit of his slide deck with all the multiple permutations between Great Britain, Northern Ireland, and the EU. We did recognise, and I'm sure it is the case, that transit is playing a part. The main issue for us in these movements that go between Great Britain, Northern Ireland and the EU is really ensuring that there is if we can say, a proper handoff between the duty suspended system so far as the EU is concerned, so the NI EU movements that are connected to the EU through the portal into the other member state, that there's a proper handoff between that system and our own version of EMCS. It's all one system, but essentially you've got a GB side now and a Northern Ireland EU side on EMCS, and we just need to ensure that those two interact properly. We need to ensure that there's duty points in the right place and that we collect duty where we should be collecting duty on import to the UK, and that the drawback arrangements work properly. So, as far as as far as we are aware, this is all working broadly okay. We're not aware of major issues. As I said, slight understatement there. It's an unusual time, it certainly is, and it has been. But as far as we know, the models that we put in place, the legislation to support that, are all standing up. for these movements. We did have an issue around the movements that start in Great Britain in duty suspense, and then they're going on through Northern Ireland into the EU, perhaps into an Irish warehouse. And this is one of those cases where, as I said, we need to get that movement off, if you like, the GB EMCS and onto the NIEU EMCS. And because there's no export declaration when the goods leave Great Britain, there's an issue as to how we close that open movement in Great Britain. So we've worked with colleagues, gave it some consideration, and where we've ended up is with the new section in Notice 197, 13.10.1, which essentially says, we will close that movement. You need to contact the EMCS help desk, and we essentially use the second EAD, i.e. the movement in Northern Ireland and the EU, as evidence that the goods have now left Great Britain. We can close the GB movement. Ideally, if the ARC for the first EAD is quoted in the invoice field of the second EAD, that makes it a bit easier to tie the two up. There were some issues sort of early on with being sure that we were tying up the right movements with the right movements, and if necessary, then we can look at other alternative evidence, but we just need something to close that GB movement. So that's in place. As far as we know, that's working. The other thing to mention, parcels, which is obviously a much wider issue, Great Britain to Northern Ireland parcels, where there are temporary arrangements in place. We have temporary customs arrangements, but we've also introduced temporary excise arrangements, and we're going to be starting some workshops soon, looking to develop really a simplified model, so that where this is all in connection with the offset mechanism, where the duty paid in Great Britain does not, shall we say, cancel out the Northern Ireland duty, and there is an additional amount to pay, we need to find a simpler way of A, making that calculation, and B, doing the reporting. And we want to do that really, certainly by the end of the year. That's all focused on parcels. As I've said there, we do recognise that some of the issues we've got there, in particularly in determining how much duty has been paid, we recognise that that's an issue for freight movements as well as parcel movements. So when we've worked through those models, we'll be considering whether there's any application more widely, and potentially some conversations about making that offset work more smoothly in the freight context as well. And that's really all I have by way of an update. I'm sure we've got time for some questions. I will give Phil an opportunity to come in if he wants on the VAT side, but I think he was largely, as I said, thinking that they'd done that and was available for questions. So that's really it from my perspective.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Phil, is there anything you want to say at this point, or are you happy to sit and wait for any questions?
Thanks. Yeah, just to confirm that there isn't really a great deal to update on what we presented a couple of weeks ago.
Sure.
Everything that was on there will, it remains the case, but obviously happy to pick up any questions.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, Phil. Thank you. Okay. Graham, over to you then. Shall we facilitate the Q&A session?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've had one come through already, but if anyone on the call has got any questions, just you can put your hand up or just put them in the meeting chat. But Mike Robertson had a question, so I don't know if you want to unmute yourself and share that.
Yeah, thank you. It's just a very quick question. Our haulier who's been moving goods for my company to Northern Ireland to a number of different consignees has incorrectly placed my company's EORI as the consignee, prompting us to need to complete the supplementary declarations. Is there a way to get that changed on TSS so that the supplementary declarations are prompted to the correct consignees?
Yes, there is. So there was a new change coming in, I think, this weekend as well, which will allow to amend the declaration to the correct account. It is a carrier-driven process. So what I would advise you to do is create a case on the TSS, copy the declaration number, and just ask for it to be assigned to the correct importer of records. Then the team will be in contact with the carrier to confirm who the correct importer of records should be, and amendments can be made then.
That's brilliant. Thank you.
And just to add to that, Mike, the only reason it's sort of taken us a while to kind of get the amendments right is because we're having to recall declarations from government systems that we don't control and then change who it goes to. So it's more it's difficulty from a back end, but from a front end, if you, as Mike said, please just raise the paper trail, and nobody will be expecting you to complete subtext that you're owed. You know, don't worry if you're getting notifications, because like I said, because we prioritize flow and getting a service up very quickly, there are quite a lot of traders who are having similar difficulties, or you know, where a single digit has been put in incorrectly and now you're getting pinged for subtext for movements that you never actually completed. So you know, this kind of goes across the board. Please don't worry if you're getting pinged, just raise the case to say this wasn't for me. And as Magda said, there's a huge amount of amendments work that's going in to manually make sure these go to the correct traders. It's also worth noting that shortly you'll be seeing on the TSS, for when your haulier does want to type in an EORI number and isn't sure if it's correct or not, soon you'll be able to link it to the trader name. And this will be for all TSS users. It will be under an opt-out type option, so you can actually finally see, am I linking this to the correct business, the correct trader, and not just kind of having to blindly put an EORI number in. So hopefully it will help get rid of some of these inconsistencies.
That actually came in live this weekend as well,
Yeah.
I believe. So
Perfect.
The EORI numbers were not mandatory at the very beginning, where carriers were allowed to type in the name and address of the importer. But now the EORI numbers are being validated and are made mandatory on the ENS stage. So hopefully that will reduce the amount of instances with incorrect EORIs being assigned.
Yeah, I just from my perspective, I think that's been quite an issue. So that's a real step forward, because I know a number of members, I think Graham, have mentioned this before, that where you know they're being sucked into to do a subdeck that they shouldn't be doing, as Mike's outlined. So the fact that you can now raise a case and get that amended, I think that's a huge leap forward. So that's good news. Good news.
Glad to hear that.
Good. Graham, any more?
No, actually no. Mike provided us with our only question. So thanks, Mike. But does anyone else have any questions they want to share?
I can't believe this is. I mean, no disrespect to anybody, but I cannot believe this is running as smoothly as that would suggest. Or is it me? Is that me? Or
I think we'll have many more questions next time round when we actually get to introduce the customs warehousing functionalities within the system.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Probably don't disagree. Yeah. Yeah.
I guess one thing we should add there then is, if you are either the warehouse keeper or the declarant who's been moving goods between the customs warehousing or between excise warehousing, or as we said, under any special procedure that has yet to be released on the TSS, it's the same principle. We are very aware that we haven't released the functionality yet, and as our HMRC. So if again you're getting pinged for notifications for subdecks you cannot clear because you're not moving goods in free circulation, you're waiting for us to release the procedure codes, as I said, whether it's IPR, OPR, customs warehousing, there is a section for you just to tick, waiting for TSS functionality, so that an agent won't keep bugging you or you won't get the automated emails. And as I said, RGR what has gone live this weekend, Full Frontier goes live next week, and in the following month or two, the whole suite of alternate procedures will be released. So if you are waiting for it, please know we are very, very aware, and we know that this has required you to kind of keep your records since the 1st of Jan. So please, we do appreciate it, and let us know if there's any kind of problems that you have moving forward. And we'd be really keen to see how we could support this group as we do start releasing this functionality, because we know how key it is to trade.
Okay, Carol has got her hand up. Carol James.
Yes. Yes, hi. I may have missed this because I did have to go down to my door and answer the door when I had a delivery at one point just before this. So you might have already answered it. But you were saying about that they now need the supplementary declarations need to be completed by the 5th working day. What does that change from the 4th working day? And is that just for TSS, or is that for anybody operating the IDR?
Yeah, it was just a TSS decision. It's the way the payments lined up. I'm not entirely even sure what the rationale was. It was just about 2 months ago.
So just a question then. So TSS has got a separate agreement about EIDR to anyone else operating EIDR, because anyone else operating EIDR will have to complete still by the 4th working day. Is that right?
Yes or no. If you think, Carol, about how our system works, the majority of goods aren't moving under our EIDR. So it's kind of the way we chose to separate it out. So it's our standard goods are held in our EIDR, and then they're submitted CDS at subdeck level, which is compliant with the UCC. And then all the controlled goods move straight into CDS, so don't move under EIDR. So I think it was just a reconciliation point.
Okay. Yeah.
You okay with that, Carol?
Yes.
Good. Just one question from me. I've been speaking with traders whose consignee, have not got themselves registered with TSS, and going back to this consignee bit, and obviously the obligation for them to complete the subdeck. Is there an educational piece there to deliver around, well, look, because if you are receiving goods in Northern Ireland, and you're the importer of record, then you do need to make these subdecks in TSS. Just thinking it'd be good to get your thoughts around that.
I can kind of cover that if you want. Save Shani's voice for a second. So the rules are within the system that if the consignee or importer of record is found within the system, then the supplementary declarations are being generated against their accounts. But I believe that when the importer's account cannot be found, then the declaration will be created against the exporter.
Right. So
we are trying to get as many traders on the TSS as possible, but we know that some of them will not be registered yet. So I guess it will be more education on the particular case-by-case scenario when the supplementary declaration goes to the exporter, but they know that it shouldn't be them, it should be the importer. So I believe then it will be the commercial decision between exporter and importer.
Yeah.
Actually get the importer registered on TSS and then request the supplementary declaration to be moved to the relevant account.
Right. So that's the solution. Okay. So get the consignee, the importer registered, raise a case, and then get that movement pointed at that new registration. Yeah.
That's correct.
Okay, that's really helpful.
Carol, you've got your hand up again. Have you got another question?
I have, yes.
Excellent.
Sorry.
No, far away. Feel free.
You're saying about getting as many people as possible registered for TSS. I'm aware, and I think going forward there will be more people that probably be considering this. TSS is obviously a time-limited service, and some traders will decide actually not to use TSS and to set something up that will be that they'll be able to use going forward for business as usual once the TSS service is withdrawn. If so, how do you identify if say a haulier has done the entry summary declaration through TSS? How do you know then whether you're going to be following up and doing the supplementary declaration, or whether the supplementary declaration is being done by somebody else on behalf of the Northern Ireland trader?
So currently, when ENS is being created, the SFD is automatically generated based on that, and the supplementary declaration is triggered when that SFD is marked as arrived by GVMS. So from this weekend, the hauliers will be able to select create ENS without creating SFD, and that is specifically for instances where traders are using their own system, their own CFSP authorization to communicate directly with CDS, but the hauliers are still relying on TSS as a
ENS
to communicate.
Yeah.
TSS.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was just wondering about that sort of relationship, because obviously there will be a lot of hauliers that will just continue to use ENS, the ENS service with TSS,
Yeah.
but the traders will actually be using an alternative intermediary to actually, or their own. They might register, you know, they might register themselves and do their own, you know, have software and do their own declarations.
Yeah.
I just wondered how you were going to manage that.
So the option has been become available. So it's
So
best.
the haulier has to know at the point that they submit that the ENS, whether the trader will be doing their own supplementary declaration external to TSS, or whether they will be using TSS. So
yeah, and
as a haulier, you need to know exactly what your trader is going to do at the point that you submit it.
Yeah,
because that's something that we need to be aware of. I think that's we need to make sure that we get that covered off.
Yeah, so best to speak to the hauliers and make sure that your contracts and agreements with them.
Well, we are quite often the haulier, so we are the haulier in a lot of these cases. But it might, I'm not sure. I'm quite new to the supply chain business, although I've been in Express for a long time. But I'm not sure how well we know our customers and what they're doing with regard to using TSS or another broker or intermediary of some sort.
It's best to check with the customers.
Yeah.
I have to say I've not seen the live version of the system yet, but I think if you select that the SD will be created outside of TSS, I think you do have to provide, the hauliers will have to provide a importer CFSP authorization.
Yeah.
Just to
so
satisfy.
with all of the data that you've received up to this point, and now you say you're working on the backlog and doing the supplementary declarations for the backlog. For that backlog declaration, are you making an assumption that all of those where they've submitted ENS data will be using TSS?
Yeah. I think, sorry, Carol, but just to jump in, I think it's really important that we're clear on the terminology here. So everybody to date that has used the TSS will have completed both their ENS and their full import declaration, so the simplified frontier and the subdeck. And we were really clear from day one, as you said, TSS isn't mandatory, but if you were going to use it, you had to do all three declarations because of the way that the process was triggered. You couldn't pick and choose. As of Magda said, as of now, you can now separate the ENS. So if a trader is using their own authorization, doing their own decks, but it's not just the subdeck, you wouldn't then be raising the simplified frontier or the supplementary declaration as that's the full import. We can't split those. So just something to be aware of, because we have been asked, can we raise the SFT with you and do the subdeck ourselves? The answer is no, because you'd be using TSS's CFSP to raise one half of your import and then your own, which it doesn't really make sense, and it's not legally how you can do it. So going forward, you will be able to do the ENS separately. Yes, but not the import.
But not the supplementary declaration separately. You have to have done the ENS first.
No, so if you think of them as separate declarations, so your ENS is obviously your safety security, which we can support on. It's now been decoupled, and then you've got your simplified frontier declaration and your supplementary declaration, which form two separate halves of a full import declaration. So that's the part you can't separate. So you can now do your ENS on TSS and you won't trigger the rest of it, but you can't just do the simplified frontier and then do the subdeck yourself. You either do all of your import with us or none of your import with us. It's kind of the point where we just wanted to make clear that that's where the difference is. So when we're talking about our backlog, we're talking about everybody who has moved goods. We've raised the ENS, that's been cleared. We've completed a simplified frontier for you, and you're waiting to complete your supplementary declaration on the TSS. If you as we said, moving forward, if you are a haulier who accidentally raises the wrong ENS and it triggers the process, that's fine. Just raise the case to say, here's the correct details, please delete that simplified frontier, and it will get cancelled before it, subdeck is completed. There's lots of flexibility here. You just have to make sure TSS as a system is aware, because obviously everything's almost fully automated. So it's just the way that things will get triggered.
Yeah, it's just, I'm just conscious of uncoupling those things just then opens up the possibility of duplicate declarations.
Yeah, and it does, and to a certain degree that has happened, because like I said, these are systems that are talking to each other. But again, it's still super early days. The service has only been live for 6 months, so we are kind of working through these things. And as I said, anytime, just raise a case. Either an agent will contact you, or you'll be notified that duplicate has been deleted. And as long as there are live sort of records of the right movements, then that's all fine.
Okay. It's good that you've got so much flexibility at TSS, which a lot of intermediaries don't seem to have the same sort of flexibility.
Thank you. And that's exactly like we said, the point. TSS is free to use. It's here to support businesses. So we're trying to cover as many of the varieties so that the majority of traders don't have to pay out of pocket for this if we can help.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, that's definitely an improvement, isn't it? That flexibility. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, it is for sure.
That's good. So we just need to be clear what we can and what we can't do, and what we can uncouple and what we can't uncouple. So I think that's Shahani, that's very useful to understand what we can and what we can't do. So that's really good. Yeah. Excellent.
Okay, Christina, you've got a question.
Christina's still on mute.
Are you still here? That's Christina from DHL. I don't know if there's any others.
No.
Can you hear me?
Got you now.
Yes.
Oh my word. Mute. Hate it. Just following on from what you guys were discussing, are there any dates? Have we got any dates for the withdrawal of TSS? And I'm asking that purely because of all the outstanding work. Congratulations, by the way, on everything that you're doing, and all of the new upgrades that you've put in. What we're on version 5, 6 now. We're going into July, August, September. All of that is fantastic, and the work you're doing is fantastic. But I'm still a little concerned about the withdrawal at some point. Yeah. So I'm just wondering if you want to make any comments on that.
Could I?
Oh, I was just going to say, so officially TSS is contracted on a 2+1+1. So, but as we're sort of figuring out, it's obviously it's not TSS's gift to say, it's definitely not mine and Magda's. It's to the powers that be. And I think the general view, and HMRC colleagues, please jump in if you know more. I think the view will be it's being reviewed annually, monthly, to kind of see how traders are going. I don't think at any point HMRC or the UK government are just going to pull the TSS and potentially hurt loads of traders. I think there needs to be a point where when it feels like traders can move off, and as I said, we're still very much kind of getting to steady state. So I think there'll be a view when the more sophisticated traders have got things set up, we'll be able to move. And there may be room for TSS to kind of continue, but not for free. There's loads of variables here that we don't really know what the landscape will look like. And I think, we can just kind of stay close to it. But in the meantime, we are here for at least a couple of years. So, get comfortable, and then hopefully there'll be I think a lot of scope to kind of figure out how do we then support traders with the next step.
And I would
Thank
say
you.
it as an opportunity as well to for the education, because TSS feeds into CDS custom system. So whatever data is required by TSS, you would need that in the future, regardless of the contract.
Okay, thank you very much. Have we got any additional questions? Or if you have, then you can share them now or send them to me afterwards.
Actually, sorry, I have, it's Carol here again. I haven't got my hand raised, but one more very quick question. So I've been part for quite a few years on the CDS stakeholder group and working with the HMRC quite closely on it. And there was obviously promised 999 lines to a CDS declaration. When I last just before I joined DHL Supply Chain, which is only a few weeks ago, there was 99. Is there still a limit of 99 items on a declaration?
On TSS, yes, but there is a new functionality within TSS that will allow you to create multiple supplementary declarations relating to one SFD. So you can have one SFD that will generate one supplementary declaration. That will be limited to 99 lines, but then you can add another declaration that will be able to hold another 99 lines.
Yeah, and I mean, that's always been possible to do multiple declarations, but the promise with CDS is that there will eventually be the possibility to do a single declaration with up to 999 lines. And I know that it was that they were working on it. HMRC have, the technical people have been working on making that available as quickly as possible. So I just didn't know whether that had been made available yet.
Could I leave that question with one of HMRC colleagues? We can only talk about the TSS functionality, but if anyone from HMRC colleagues knows the answer to this?
No, I'm afraid that is one that we'd have to defer to our customs colleagues on, who aren't able to join us, but we can certainly take that away and get an update from them.
That'd be good, Richard. Yeah, if you could, that'd be really useful and helpful.
And as Magda did say, we are kind of all in the early days of TSS and CDS, and there's a lot of sort of like two-way dialogue, three-way with traders, etc. So we really do say, if you have suggestions, you have feedback, you have an example of why TSS isn't working for your supply chain, or a way that it could be much more ultimate, especially with this view of warehousing. We're really keen to understand the reality of what the trade looks like for traders, hauliers, suppliers, make sure TSS fits in with that flow, and make sure CDS also works with the data flows, because as we said, these systems have been literally built at absolute pace, and potentially not all of these things have been tested and worked through. So your input is far more valuable than you think. Please do ping us, let us know, because we really are feeding the processes as they're being defined.
Okay, good. Carol, you've got your hand again.
Yes, it's me. I'm a pest, aren't I?
Well,
thinking of lots of different questions, actually.
It's becoming the Carol Jones show. Carry on, Carol.
But so if say for instance we do have, and obviously sometimes we are shipping multiple line item, goods, and if there is more than one declaration, we then need more than one MRN number to put on the GVMS. Now, I'm not sure how our systems are set up when we capture the MRN number, normally for one shipment as such, if we call it a shipment, there would be one declaration reference. So I just need to make sure that when you deliver those MRN numbers back to us individually against the same individual, because obviously we'll send the data to you with a reference, and then you'll be sending us multiple MRNs back.
So I think we've got a bit confused here. So when we're talking about the multiple data lines, that's for the subdeck, which is obviously moved after. So when we're talking, you don't need the line items, etc. at this level. So you're just going to do your ENS. You're going to get an MRN for that. We'll also complete the SFD. You'll get an MRN for that, and those will flow through. And then when you get to the subdeck level, if you're moving standard goods, that's where we're talking about. You can put in hundreds of line items. So you're okay for the movement part of it. Yeah.
And I guess then we just have to make sure in our internal systems that we have the possibility of recording more than one MRN, a subdeck reference against each.
Yeah.
Just if I can, the MRN is being generated at consignment level. So if you have got one SFD with one consignment, you will have one MRN. But what we meant by creating multiple declarations is the supplementary declarations you can create multiples of relating to one SFD with 99 items.
And that all references with one MRN number.
And that will be post movement, so there will be no new MRN generated.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
I'll replicate everything.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think that's enough.
No, that's good.
If you do think of anything after, we'll be sure to share the slides that we shared with you today. And yeah, just if you want to contact us directly, or if you want to do it via Clive and Graham, very welcome to. And as I said, we'd be really keen to do a follow-up in about a month, to delve into the custom special procedures with the group.
Yeah, that'd be really good, Sinead. Yeah, we'd absolutely would want to do that and engage around that, because I think, yeah, both from a customs and an excise perspective, that would be really useful. So yeah, we would we encourage that, and we'll look forward to that. So that'd be good. Absolutely. Richard, anything from your side, and Philip?
No, I don't think so. Clive, thanks very much. I've enjoyed listening to the TSS presentation as well.
Yes.
But I know that's of no interest to you, but
no,
and it's
exactly.
good to hear what seems to be sort of fairly positive feedback about the sort of increased flexibility and so on. So that's great. Yeah,
no, good to get your input again, Richard. So we value that. So appreciate your time, and Phil's time as well. And yeah, I think that was really good. I think that was really insightful. I think we know there's been challenges around TSS. And that's been a real bone of contention, but that seems to obviously now be progressing and developing. So I think it's clearly the correct and right direction of travel is where we're heading. So that's really good. And I know, Graham, from our perspective, BWA, we will want to stay close with the TSS and be the conduit to engage and allow our members to do so as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And Shanali, I'll be in touch this afternoon, and we'll try and get a date in the diary for that next session.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Good. Okay. Just conscious of time. I think we.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Just what date is it that the safety and security declaration is being sort of separated? So so that they're decoupling them. What date is that?
Yesterday.
Yesterday.
I think so. We're double checking on the system because R5 literally went live yesterday, I believe. So it would just so we'll know whether it's on the system, or we can double check and pass it through via Graham if you like.
Yeah. So it's from yesterday that potentially we might be looking at the risk of duplicates. So we need to be checking with our customers what they're doing. Yeah. Perfect. Thank you.
I'll put a link in the chat that lists all the new features that went in live yesterday.
Amazing. Thank you.
Lovely. Thanks.
Thanks, Magda. Thank you. So thanks, everyone. Particular thank you for obviously to TSS and from HMRC and from Carol to Carol as well. It's been amazing. So that's been great to have that level of questions raised. And this is what these webinars are all about, quite frankly. Engagement and proactive engagement. So excellent. Thank you, Carol. Conscious of time then, so we grabbed 9 minutes back. Time for cappuccino before the next meeting. Yeah. Okay, Graham, anything from you?
Nothing from me. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks everybody, and thanks for your attending, and thanks for the presentations. They were excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, have a great afternoon, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks everyone.
Bye.
Bye now.
Bye.
Thanks everyone.
Cheers, thank you. Bye.